a series of performances, and today we have the initiation ceremony, and we will have the first debut. We will bring you a grand feast, and we have a lot of famous Peking opera artists. Maybe some of our audiences are not so familiar with Peking opera, so here we have an expert to introduce for us. This one behind me is Professor Zhang Guozheng. Dear audiences, good evening. I am honored to be here with you. So Professor Zhang is 74 years old. So in normal days, he does teaching jobs in Peking opera. A lot of artists and performers of Peking opera are all your students. Is that right? Yes. I am in the Peking Opera Academy, which is the most prestigious school for Peking opera and opera. So I graduated here, and I stayed here to be a teacher in opera, and I am very honored to bring this knowledge and impart it to as many students as possible. I am very glad that I am in this opportunity. When I first entered this career, I was provided the chance of being the main teacher in opera. As a youth teacher, I was the first one to be in charge in this class. And for the opera course, we needed high-end talents training. So we started the grad school class for Peking opera because I already had some experience and my leaders trusted in me very much. So I was the teacher in charge of the first 4 classes. So today we are honored to have you as our guest. So in tonight's performance, including when we are trying to understand the stories about Peking opera, Professor Zhang here will bring us closer to the glamour of Peking opera. So now let's take a walk inside because the audiences are already going in. There are a lot of opera fans. You know, before it was senior people who loved Peking opera, but now I can see a lot of college students and teenagers. So I was exhilarated seeing that scene. And the quintessence of our Chinese culture, the Peking opera, is no longer a gift to senior citizens. I am very glad that we are in this grand opportunity and era with our party and government putting in efforts to pass on the culture of Peking opera, and they are putting so much in supporting our cause. I feel inspired for this activity because the Central Party has taken steps to help Peking opera infiltrate, especially Peking opera classes, because it helps Peking opera to enter into the most primary classes. For example, in primary school and middle schools, we have classes for Peking opera. These achievements are very important for us because our national culture is therefore inherited. Tragedies will not happen again where a mixture of 梅兰风 and 梅艳风 happens. It is worth mentioning about our location. We are in the public theater. This theater have a history of over 80 years. It was founded in 1936. Now it's renovated. Let's take a look at the backstage. So the backstage kept the original appearance of the building. So back then, it was a cinema. The function of it was playing movies, and after that, it was used as a theater for operas. Masters like Mei Lanfang was here performing as well. This theater is even older than I am. It is said that during the Japanese invasion, this was the new opera. This was a place where art and culture collided. We have multiple achievements, so some famous performers were here. There were a lot of stories about it as well. Artists would sometimes turn down the offers. I'll bet the money provided. But as an important city in the northeast of China, this theater satisfies the needs of our general public's desire for folk art. So this theater has witnessed a history and development of opera in Jilin Province. It was rooted here. Okay, let's enter the venue and take a look. They are about to start. A number of audiences are already in here. There are no empty seats. I heard all the tickets were sold out. And our chairman, Batu, is here as well. So today is the celebration for the 16th anniversary. So today the debut has chosen a famous play and invited some famous artists here. I heard there is a meaningful story here. So 16 years ago, in 1958, 10 a.m. in October 25th, the 25th, the government has established a plaque for the Peking Opera Theater of Jilin. So that was the formal establishment of this theater. So this day marks the 16th anniversary. This is a very meaningful day. We have a lot of opera fans of Professor Zhang here. So actually he has a lot of friends here. In the opera convention, I was there as a guest for 4 times, and it has a good rating. So audiences in Jilin watched it as well. For the power of media, I have met a lot of friends, and I can feel that our friends in Jilin Province really knows this line of work. And we have Opera Fans Association as well. They are the strong backbone of Peking Opera. They have supported and provided help for our theater as well. We have some upcoming performers here tonight, and they have a lot of fans. Because Professor Zhang cannot stand for very long for health reasons, so we have borrowed 2 seats. Now I have the repertoire. There are 18 plays. Every one of them is a short play. Is there anything that you can introduce? Any famous ones? It's divided into 2 categories. The former half is played by Jilin's performers like Hou Shengmei and Zhang Siguo and Zhang Leilei, and young female warrior Gu Hongyu and old female Rose. We have trained these. The latter half of the play consists of many famous artists in Peking Opera. So leaders and prestigious artists have come here. They will be providing us a grand feast of opera plays. They have their own distinctive features, as is Liu Ziwei. He will sing Chunqiu Pei. And there are a lot of other prestigious performers, like Yu Wanzeng, a prestigious performer in young male roles. So today, these famous performers gather in here to support their friends and their friendly theater, which is us. As you can see, all these were our colleagues and classmates in our grad school. So today's gala is the grand feast of a celebration of the 16th anniversary, but it's also a report performance. Under the policies of our government, the walls and barriers have been cut down, and we are developing in clusters, so I am really glad to see this, because this performance will be the most glorious and exciting. We have stressed on Ni Mao Cai. He is the chairman of the Peking Opera Theater and also the theater, and he's a famous student. There are a lot of famous schools for Peking Opera, and some new ones are coming up with their own distinctive features. They're named after the founder of the schools. Like, can you introduce us to for the Gao School? I will introduce for you briefly, because there are very distinctive performances in male roles, and the most distinctive feature is the voice. Every performer has their own ideas and their own voices. So in the process, they have embodied their own personal characteristics. So new schools come up. So there are over a dozen of schools for male roles and female roles, like Tan School. It also have subtypes as well. Under the influence of Mr. Tan, the famous famous elderly male roles imitate his performances. So in digesting Mr. Tan's performance, they have also injected their own style of performances. There are a variety of schools, and Nimao Cai is a descendant of Gao school. He has learned from Mr. Tan as well, but he has a very talented voice. His voice is very loud and high-pitched. He started off as an ordinary performer. So it was commendatory critiques for him. He has gathered a lot of features and he used his own understanding and Mr. Tan's style to form Gao's school. But in the process of inheritance, because of the high requirements like a shrill voice and loud voice, I wish our youngsters can learn from our beautiful host who understands a lot about Peking Opera. So Gao School has formed a distinctive feature as well. Mr. Gao is a decent man, so the subjects he chose were the critic for evil and praise for kindness. He had also made many plays during the Japanese invasion time to reflect the repression. He has his own spirit, positive and negative. So Mr. Gao has a lot of proteges who are very famous as well. For example, Li Heseng. So Li Heseng is a teacher of Nimao Cai. So both Mr. Li learned from the same teacher, but they have formed different styles. Nimao Cai was the youngest protege. Before he passed away, Nimao Cai was a very young boy. After taught by his teacher, he was also taught by his older classmates. He is not young anymore, but his voice is shrill and loud, just as the old days. You can feel the aroma of his teacher in his performances. So Gao School's art forms, which showed the stories of our ancient people. Now it is praising the heroes in anti-Japanese wars. It is appreciated by the audience as well. This play was created by Li Hesheng before he passed away. So the inheritance was all about continuing the work of teachers. Because of the limit of life, students would pass it on, develop it, and have it survived. I am very glad and touched that Ni Mao Cai does not only learn from his teacher, but also Mr. Li. Before we start, we have some time before the formal start. We will return the seats to the audience. We'll bring it to the backstage to see the preparation of our performers, especially for the costumes and makeups in Peking Opera. There's something to learn about. For people who don't really understand Peking Opera, it will pique their interest as well. Now we're going to the kitchen to see the cooking process. The guests are seating. Now we're entering the backstage. We didn't understand what the backstage of the Peking Opera performances was like in daily life. There are not a lot of colorful makeup. Some performances now are using day-to-day costumes as well. Now this afternoon, they just played Fire Mountain, a play originated in Jilin Province. Now we can see the performers they are preparing. Do you know this one? He was just starting the ceremony of teacher to student this morning, and Professor Zhang hosted that. Today I will be playing Ban Chao in the play Yu Men Guan. He is a young male role, so it is more about youngsters. So his voice will be a combination of falsetto and natural voice. Does it put limit on the age of the performers? That's the glamour of the Peking Opera. No matter how old you are, you can just wear the makeup and convince people. If he's skilled at performing, then you can believe he's a teenager when he's playing one. So that is the situation for young male roles. We will have a Yu Guanzhong, a performer who is 70 years old, and you will be convinced that he is young because his role is young. Ban Chao is a civil and martial performer. So in the play Yu Men Guan, the costume he wears is archery clothes. This costume is rather light. It can use for doing archery on horses. Because of historical reasons, we use Ming Dynasty costumes. It doesn't stress on the time, but the identity. The costume shows that this character is a martial role. We can see a lot of other performers are also wearing their makeup and costumes as well. This is painted face. There are 4 types of rows: male rows, female rows, painted face, and clowns. Under the type of male rows, there are elderly, military, young, right-faced, young boy. The subtypes are varied as well. So this is the combination of male rows, and Dan means female rows. And Professor Zhang mainly teaches Jing, painted face. So the painted face are rather rough. The colors and patterns indicate the characteristics of the role. Like Bao Gong, we use blackface for him to show his integrity, because it indicates integrity and justice. So he is a beloved role on stage. I want to know, how can you recognize who he is under the makeup? Because he does it every day and I know him, so also I can recognize his voice. He is a very outstanding performer. Can you feel the seriousness and a little bit anger? I look forward to your exciting performance to exhibit the achievements in these couple of decades. This is a headdress. If you don't understand Peking Opera, dear audiences, you can try to feel it because it is very tight on your head. Our heads. Sometimes we would throw up for it. But if you do not have a tight headdress, it might fall off on the stage. I think this is very beautiful. He's a very handsome young boy. Let's take a look inside here. This is the backstage. You can see all the costumes here. Here we have our matchmaker. This is a female role. It's a vivacious and a married woman. Look, this is very beautiful. The headdress is also very tight. You can try it for yourself. How old are you? I am 25 years old. Does it require you to be very young to play this? If you're in your 60s, you still have to perform like this. Then it depends on your skills at performing. For these years, our theater has focused on training the talents in Peking Opera. This is a role in Zhang School. It has developed over time as well. These female roles are very crucial in Peking Opera. Male roles and female roles, which are shown and done, are the most important side courses. Like Mei Lanfang was also a very prestigious female role because there were few females in Peking Opera before, so a lot of males would perform as Dan, aka female roles. Currently, is there any more males playing female roles? We don't, because we have enough performers, so we don't specifically arrange males to perform as female roles, but there still are some males who are playing female roles. Some elderly male roses and painted faces are also played by women. So this kind of situation happens. So this is a great time in artistic development. We don't have too much limitation and restriction. As long as we can develop, we can boldly experiment to let the audiences decide whether it is good or not. Let me ask you, what will you play? I will play Tan Jier in 望江情. She is a intelligent, beautiful female. So you are playing main female roles? Yes. So the costume and makeup would take how long? If you do it carefully, about 2.5 hours. It is very normal for the makeup time and costume time to be longer than the actual performance time. So the on-stage performance, although it could be as short as 10 minutes, the preparation could take up to 2 hours. So, is there any differences between main female roles and revishes and unmarried women? It does not have specific limitations. The main female role sometimes is martial roles, like Mu Guiying is the main female roles, but also a martial role. So this is the time where Mu Guiying was in war times. What are you playing today? So, because her husband was set up by some bad people, so she posed as a male to save her husband. This is the representative work of Mr. Guan. So she is the protege of our Heilongjiang Province's prestigious professor. So this one character will take about 3 hours of performances. First, it was a married young girl, and then it would pose as a young male rose and military roles. So it is pretty challenging for our performers. So the performance lasts about 3 hours. So it is very busy for her because she has to change costume and makeup, and you have to be versatile in all kinds of skills and techniques. Otherwise, you cannot have a complete skill set. After speaking about the knowledges about the costumes and makeup of Peking Opera, but we are talking about the deep bond of Jilin Province and Peking Opera. There was a businessman in Jilin Province. He assisted in founding a large-scale and prestigious troupe called Xiliancheng. I think you are very knowledge in this aspect. I hope that you can do more reports on this. Yes, that's common knowledge for us on the process of development in Peking Opera. There is a great mechanism called Keban. The most influential one is Fuliancheng troupe in Beijing. It has changed its name once. So for the performers, they were really poor, and they were provided by Liu Zihou, a rich businessman in Jilin Province. He was not only an audience, he really loved Peking Opera, so he put all his money on the folk art. So he funded two great educators in Beijing. First, Ye Chunshan. We can have a video clip of Liu Zihou's exhibition hall. There is a picture of Liu Zihou. This is in his late age, including Ye Chunshan. So he was the chairman of Fuliancheng. So under the funding of Liu Zihou, so he was actually the principal because Liu Zihou loved Peking Opera, but he was not an insider in this line of work. So he needed someone professional. So he found Ye Chunshan, and Ye Chunshan found another artist, Xiao Changhua. So these two, under the provision of Liu Zihou, the three of them have made great achievements in a whole era of the Peking Opera. They have trained over 700 performers, and a lot of prestigious artists come from this troupe as well. Our academy was based on this troupe. There are a lot of famous male roles in Ye family. They have a lot of lineage as well. So Mr. Ye became the fourth principal. I will get back to Beijing in 4 days to celebrate the 140th anniversary for him. And we have a committee in inheriting the spirit of Fuliancheng. We will have a question to ponder: how do we properly do the job of training talents in Peking Opera? That's what we've been researching and exploring these years as well. So this is like the Peking University or Beijing or Tsinghua University for Peking Opera, like Ma School and Tan School. All the founders are the student of him. Like I have a picture of the founder of Tan School, Tan Xinpei. So Fu Liancheng was the honorary chairman. Before Fu Liancheng, there was also a famous troupe, but smaller. Our history connects with each other. It's developing and inheriting. We also have a historical site. We have Jinyang Restaurant in Beijing. Liancheng was founded there. It was called the originating place of Peking Opera for people to commemorate this unforgettable and remarkable history. Our theater has specifically organized a play for this, for Niu Zihao, how he started the troupe and helped us to gain the opportunity for learning. So a lot of people say that Jilin Province is the second hometown of Peking Opera. So it has a deep connection to Peking Opera. Like you said, there are a lot of graduates of the Opera Academy, and they are pursuing their careers here. Like this, these are the flags on the back. The costumes in our military has to serve as protective gears. So back then, our ancestors were very smart. They used leathers and metals because it was cold weaponry era. All the weapon they used was spears, swords. They were fighting on horses, and they used heavy weapons, and they wore heavy armors as well. So they used animal leathers to act as protective gear. So the protective gears are now exaggerated in an artistic form. We have put some the heavy and bulky things to be aesthetically pleasing objects. It is very difficult for you to handle it. You need a lot of years' efforts. It has to be very tight as well. So after tightening it up, it is very hard for people to sing or even talk. This is a light one. You can feel it. This is ox leather. It feels rather okay to hold in your hand, but it can be really tiring if you have to carry it on your back and then perform at the same time. So after this performance one day, we asked an audience, how much do you think all the gears, all the costumes weigh for one performer? It's actually more than 10 kilos. As you can see, the shoes, the beard, and the costume can weigh a lot. And some of them need to do flips. So you can imagine how hard it is. We need a lot of years of practice and exercises, and then you can go on to stage. Every type of rose needs specific movements. So practice is in need. Otherwise, audiences wouldn't like it. For those new to the Peking Opera, they feel rather scared because people say that Peking Opera are difficult to comprehend, but actually it is not. There are a lot of jargons in Peking Opera. There are professional names for the costumes. So hearing all these words would make people confused. The hats can indicate different ranks. You could see the hat and then tell if it belongs to a civil or a marshal. This can distinguish from the protagonist and antagonist. So one side is soldiers, the other is uprising farmers. So by looking at the costume, you can understand which side this person is on, including the facial makeup. It is not too hard to comprehend. So please tell our audiences, how can we start appreciating as newcomers in the Peking Opera? First, I want you to not feel afraid of comprehension, to try it for yourself. It's okay if you don't like it, because we all have different favors. You can never really appreciate it unless you actually go into the theater, and you can also find a friend who understands and knows Peking Opera to tell you some knowledges about it. So there are some common songs that we all know about and we can all understand. It is not difficult because it's just like our daily talk. Some audiences who are new to it are just afraid of this. They are misguided by the fear sense. So Peking Opera is telling a story. It is people acting and saying in an artistic form. They're beautifying the conditions in daily lives. Let's take a look at the repertoire. Which of the plays are suitable for the newcomers, for audiences? Like 大龙袍. We have a lot of plays. In ancient times, it talks about the story and plot about the emperor and his concubines. Let's take a look. Let's take a seat. It's okay. And Bao Gong, this story is about Bao Gong trying to solving the case of the emperor finding his biological mother. This is a huge mistake, not being able to recognize his biological mother. So we have to take punitive measures on the emperor as well. So Bao Gong here hits the emperor, but he is at a lower rank than the emperor, so he shouldn't be beating emperor. So he is very smart and intelligent, so Bao Gong tries to have emperor take off his dragon gown, and he just hits on the gown. So this is the play. You can instantly understand the story and the plot. The emperor then goes back to the Forbidden City and restore his rank. So let's take a look at the stage. This is the orchestra. Apart from the performers singing, the ensemble is really crucial as well. This is called Yingchun. This is the accompaniment of Peking Opera fiddle, serving as the opening play. Yingchun actually means embracing the spring. It reflects the spring for the Peking Opera as well. This is a very outstanding elder female role. Which play will you be on? About five or six. This is a good story. Every story is an outstanding one. We can see the performers are waiting to go on stage right now. They're using this stage to celebrate the anniversary of this theater. This is a grand festival for them, celebrating the birthday for their unit. I am really glad as well. I am the volunteer here. I'm just here helping. He has provided us a lot of assistance in constructing the team and training for talents. Her voice is really good. I have worked here, so I know everyone here. Because the formal performance is on, so we'll have it on stage. So in the process, Professor Zhang will introduce.